I'll do just like a little news update, I guess, by the water here. It is a little windy. Those that follow the news, I find it interesting. I listened to the news and then I just checked. There's a Supreme Court justice by the name of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and she's kind of got like this following. She's very pro-abortion, holds views sort of like you see in the majority of the media. Basically meaning, if anybody ever felt that the dismemberment of a child that was fully developed, if anybody ever questioned that maybe that's wrong, or now that we've advanced to a point where, geez, this is something that should not be celebrated as a wonderful right, the media and the Justice Ginsburgs of the world mock you. This lady's an old, forgive me, she's an old decrepit woman. She's actually made statements last year that would put her in the category of whether or not she was actually getting Alzheimer's and things of that nature. But they're going to celebrate her. CNN's doing an actual documentary on her. And as I looked at it, I thought, she will give an account for the voice. People in authority that gave voice to things throughout the history of humanity. Meaning you gave voice to particular things that in the end society would say is one of the worst things ever. And you give an account for those things. And I do not celebrate that woman one bit. You say you should respect. She was a friend of Justice Scalia, who passed away about a year and a half ago or so. Conservative. And they celebrated like we can have these differences and still be friends. Don't ever forget the accountability you're going to give to God. You lived your lives with a particular view. You hid behind some type of an ideology that said people saw us as we were advocates for the people that were hurting and the people that were, and you are so ignorant you can't even see that. And what made me start thinking about that was this doctor. It's been kind of a famous case. He was an Olympic doctor for the girls on the various Olympic teams, and he had a history of sexually abusing those girls. And his name, I think, was Nasser. It's been in the media for a while now. But recently, these girls were given their statements of how it affected them. Of course, this man, I think he's 88 years or something in prison, life, basically. And then, I know we don't think. If you had some psychotic person, whether it was a doctor or a nurse or somebody, even if they went into the nursery of a hospital and touched inappropriately one of these children, babies, in a sexual manner, rightfully that doctor would be sent to prison. Though the child would be, say, 2-day-old-born infant. The reason we have laws like that is to protect innocent people from the damage that occurs when people are abused or things bad happen to them. And it's real possible that the 2-day-old would never have any recollection, probably have no real damage from something that occurred like that. But regardless of that, just because we protect the vulnerable in society, that man, if he touched that child in some type of sexual way, he would give an account for that. And that same exact child, say it was 1 hour after it was born, and then you take that same child 1 hour before it's born, you crush its skull, suck the brains out, suction catheter abortion, you dismember piece by piece. When they do late-term abortions and they sever the arms, the legs, and they take all the parts out, this is known, and they make sure that they put those parts, they kind of like put them back together in a pan to make sure they didn't accidentally leave any parts in the mother. And what they do is they put the little arms and legs, and then they say this. And yet the same people who would advocate for the conviction of that man who touched that child in an appropriate way would say that same child, that same body, that same size, if you dismembered it, chopped it apart, and many in the media rejoice over that. Not only do they not question it, they actually say it's the wonderful celebration. Now, if the ignorance of a Miss Ginsburg or whoever else it is, as she nears the end of her life, you think you've lived well by not being able to judge even the smallest thing? Paul rebuked the Corinthians. He said, "You are taking each other to court. Isn't there a wise person among you that could simply make a decision as fundamental as that? And you don't even see it." Now on the FBI thing, talking about for my friends that are in other countries that every now and then happen along our videos. The FBI and the whole Trump thing and the Trump investigation, texts are now coming out. But the FBI is the Federal Bureau of Investigation, just like other countries have their own different types of groups like that by different names. Spy agencies, CIA for us as well, FBI. And there was a general by the name of General Flynn, and he was with Trump for a little while, but then he pled guilty to a very heinous crime. I mean, it was a wicked crime. What he did was he lied to this agency. He lied to this agency called the Federal Bureau of Investigation. So what this agency just did yesterday, the Justice Department of the United States is seeking, and Congress, they're seeking certain text messages and information behind some of the people who are investigating the president, because things came out that were concerning. And the FBI released a bunch of them and said, oops, we lost about 5,000. And the ones they lost happened to kind of be right at a critical time of what Congress and others who are trying to find out truth needed. So in essence, the FBI, for all practical purposes, said, we will lie, cheat, collude, and destroy, and then we'll go after you if you dare lie to us. I see no difference between that kind of stuff than any other Turkey or anywhere else. Turkey, by the way, being I mentioned it, supposed ally in our war in Syria, they attacked some of our backed troops on the Turkish-Syrian border a few days ago. They made movements for that. Today we call it the Ring of Fire in the Pacific, where there's a lot of earthquake and activity, and that's a big thing. Today, the last 24 hours, there was a lot of activity in these earthquakes. Somewhat of a shaking. And I just wanted to do that update because when you have anybody, I don't care who it is, the whole Schumer thing has now been looked at, his, quote, shutdown of the government, it's looked at now as a huge joke. And the reason it was a huge joke is Schumer, the Democrats wanted to be able, which Mr. Schumer did do, go on the floor of Congress and say, Trump did, such and such. And so in order for them to reopen the government at midnight last night, they made a deal and said, but they didn't make it with the president, but they did make the deal with the Senate Majority Leader, McConnell, I guess. And they said, look, we're going to do it. But Trump, look, he didn't make any deal with Mr. Schumer. And he said, my thing that I said all along, we're going to work on something. We're going to work on it together. And so in essence, Trump himself, he stood for the principle that he said, I'm going to want it to involve border security, the wall, and all these other things. And for the most part, like the Ginsburgs thing. Some of these people, and I'm not just, look, I'm not anti-Semitic, okay? There's a long history of anti-Semitism. But I would just simply say, I know in society, when we look at some of these people, Miss Ginsburg, look, there were real questions whether that woman was losing her mind and whether she should ever be celebrated by a documentary by a quote news organization. It's highly questionable because you're supposed to be unbiased, but we now know. But when I look at the track record, I don't see it as, and I'm not a big conservative that is anti-freedom for anybody. But I try to explain that little example. We even have laws in this state that the media and the pro-abortion people fought against. One of the laws in the United States was if you accidentally run into a pregnant woman in a vehicle or something of that nature, or hit her or whatever, and she loses the child, no matter what stage, a week pregnant, you're going to be tried for homicide. That fetus, even if it's, as far as I understand, even if the woman just got pregnant, you can be tried and will be tried for killing that baby. Now the pro-abortion, the Ginsburgs, the media, oh, there's Furman. All of them did not want that law to pass. Meaning, if a woman, and say if she was 8.5 months pregnant, if she was beat, hit, or a car hit her, they did not want the person who killed that woman's child while pregnant, they did not want to be able to charge the perpetrator with homicide. Because then they said, then we're going to have to admit that these late-term children are actually human beings. And this is how it's been played in this country now for a long time. I don't see any of us as a just society. It's a shame that the people in the FBI, who were so arrogant, just like the Clintons did, said, Congress, people of the country, if you dare think you're going to investigate us for a lot of shaky things we have done and said and texted to one another, the FBI basically said, you got nothing coming to you. We rule this place. We run this place. We'll destroy whatever text we got to destroy. We do what we want. That's what they said to us. But then they said, if a general with a great history, General Flynn, if you lie to us, Mr. Flynn, how dare you lie to us? Not that you destroy text messages or hid things. No. If you simply lie to us, Mr. Flynn, we're going to convict you of a crime, which they did, tatted his image. And these same arrogant people had the gall to say, you know what, we lost 5,000 pieces of information that you, the public, and a lot of people want. And what does the media say about that? The Color Times and all the media, they would cover these things up as much as they ever could because they're not concerned about reporting to you truth. They are corporate puppets that do everything they do for cash. One of the greatest polluters in the city is the Color Times because we have advanced beyond the day of print newspapers. And for all of you local Color Times people that are so uninformed about the world, I'm sure many of you have never left Corpus Christi. I walked past the Gray Lady. The New York Times is supposedly called, that's the paper that everyone else, takes the standard from. And I walked past the building of the New York Times when I am in New York City. And they charge a lot for their paper because newspaper print is going by the wayside. And those that are critics of bloggers and people that speak like myself, their main criticism is the whole fake news narrative. And I could go over and over and over and over and show you, why would I, who takes no money, sells no ads, and tries to inform myself and advocate for people, even the unborn, and what is my motivation to try to speak truth to, try to inform you. But say if you're some newspaper, some media figure, some talking head, and you've got a good salary and things are going well for you, and you realize, man, I got to go out and report all this crap that we've been doing for the last year and a half, like kids. Your motivation is, well, I need my money. So if I got to lie to the public, I'll lie to them. If we got to tell the public that Miss Ginsburg, an old Jewish woman, who I'm sure she meant well in her life, which at this stage of the game, it looks like the woman does have Alzheimer's, and she also cannot see that the destruction of a child is a wicked thing. As a matter of fact, they praise that as a right to be celebrated. And if you cannot see that blindness, so the update is, I wanted to discuss that because there's no greater damage to a child. It would be wrong if a doctor went into a hospital nursery and sexually touched a one-day-old child. That would be wrong, and he would give an account. But the damage would be nothing like the severing of the arms, sucking out of the brain, which is called suction catheter abortion. And not only would the same people advocate rightfully for the prosecution of that doctor who might have done that to an infant, but those same people, the majority of them, would look at the severing of the arms and legs and destruction of that child a second before it's born. They would look at it as a great, wonderful human right that we must celebrate and fight for. Thankfully, Ms. Ginsburg, by the word of the Lord, she'll be gone soon. That's the word of the Lord. No threat. That's the word of the Lord. Ms. Ginsburg will be gone soon. Her life, and then she'll give an account to Yahweh, who revealed himself to Israel, to the Jewish people, through the prophets, to the great lawgiver Moses, and then in John's gospel, the same Jewish people. Jesus said, before Abraham was, I am. I am. That's the name Yahweh. He said, understand something. All people, Israel, Gentile, understand something. You're going to give an account. You will give an account. There is nothing to praise about Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She probably should have been stepped down from the bench a few years ago. She made various statements in the media that which judges sitting on the court should have never made. She did that about a year and a half ago. She's not to be celebrated. She should take a sincere look at what her voice in a black robe has accomplished the last 30-something years in this country. And it's not accomplished anything that we should praise that woman because she's so ignorant. She's so ignorant of the most basic thing. I could take a 5-year-old child. I wouldn't, but I could say, I want you to look at this little baby here. Isn't this little baby wonderful and beautiful? A newborn. And then if I took a late-term abortion, I wouldn't do it. But then if I showed that severed baby, that child would be traumatized for life. And yet the Ruth Bader Ginsburgs and the Kohler Times and all the talking heads, they tell you it's such a wonderful thing that we do that in this country, that we should celebrate, because they're getting paid. They're getting paid. They lied to you for cash.